Right, back live tonight here in Focus. Last night we carried that story of a damning a report from the South African Human Rights Commission. We spoke to them on the state of water supply in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Water utilities there, it said, are violating the human rights. And this comes after complaints from residents who say they barely have access to clean drinking water. In its findings, the commission says the impact on the rights, livelihoods and dignity of communities is particularly aggravated in impoverished, vulnerable areas or vulnerable households. For more on this conversation, we're joined now by the KwaZulu-Natal Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs, MEC Siboniso Duma. MEC, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening.
Good evening to your good self, Babamdlulu Skangisa, and to your viewers at home. The honor is ours.
So one of the key things, and the reason why I would have thought I want to talk to you particularly is one of the findings says that the impact on the rights, livelihoods and dignity of communities is particularly aggravated in impoverished communities and vulnerable households. But even more so, for your attention in particular, the impact on businesses and the resulting undermining of employment, livelihoods and local economic development is devastating. It's a scathing report, I'm sure, even by any measure, if you look at it.
I'm sure if you read the report, one thing that is missing in the report is the historical empirical evidence that is citing the KwaZulu-Natal as the province in terms of the populace, in terms of the developmental pattern. I'm sure you'll understand that historical, when almost all these design, the features during the Boro era transition to the municipality in 96, you'll just understand that the design were only accommodating few individuals in those areas. So the reality is that the maintenance plan was not taken into consideration. So it meant that the new government, the new dispensation, when they took over, they had to ensure that the universal connection of every household in our communities. That meant another logistical nightmare, because it meant, like, for instance, let us take the population of eThekwini as we speak right now. It's almost at the level of 3 million. During the era of Boro, it was less than 300,000. So only few urban stream areas were going to be covered. But it's true, because of global warming, you'll understand the scarcity of resources, including the water. Some of the dam levels have gone down in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. So it means that, unfortunately, the design didn't take into cognizance that we had to embrace even skewed areas, even the hinterland, even remote rural areas that must be accommodated, and make sure that you use a lot of gravity, because mechanical, you can't supply all. But yes, it's true. There is also a state of sabotage in our areas. There is also crime taking place of our people. They don't want to pay the services in some instances.
The Commission does, to an extent, acknowledge that, yes, there are challenges that are faced by municipalities in redressing apartheid-era special planning that excluded the majority of communities from basic service provision. They also acknowledge that there is an inheritance of aging and dilapidated infrastructure. They also acknowledge that there is an overwhelming demand for water far exceeding supply. Nonetheless, they are saying that that cannot be an excuse 29 years or so, 28 years post-apartheid, that you failed to transform that system.
Why one is saying that it is not taking into cognizance, I'm sure I seen that in the preface, just as a highlight. But what in South Africa, I'm sure you know the Division of Revenue Act, which stipulates that you allocate the budget per capita. In the province of KwaZulu-Natal, nowhere in the report they are mindful that you find on a regular basis kids coming from Lesotho daily consuming the same water, tapping into the same schooling system of South Africa, taking the same medication. It's the same with Swaziland. So it means when you allocate KwaZulu-Natal appropriation bill, for instance, of 147 billion, it is only taking the effect of 12 million population, which is artificial in nature because the population is more than that. Because when the status or when the census is collected in terms of data, they don't take that. But I'm mindful of the realities. Babu Mhluli. That is why I'm saying that it's true in our municipality there is a lack of capacity. It's true in our municipality, I've already highlighted the issue of sabotage. Yeah. In some instances, what the report is not covered at length is that the issue of oversight that must be played by councillors in the municipality does not go beyond the scope of saying that workers in some instances themselves, they will sabotage the municipality because they want overtime. Workers themselves, they will consolidate a strategy of conniving with service providers because they want water tank. All those issues are critical and are pertinent, and we agree that at this rate something ought to be done and we must balance such equations.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at it quite extensively, in the beginning it cites the various individuals that would have participated in the report, including the COCTA MEC at the time, including the mayors of the various districts. Why did these players who are in government fail to highlight these things to the Commission?
Remember that the issue of understanding technical expertise, if you just interact with the mayor, in some instances they'll be overwhelmed because of time and space. Right now, I think there is a positive attribute. Minister Senzo Mchunu currently has appointed a new board called Umngeni Tugela Board, which is a new board integrating Umngeni and Umhlatuze, and in the history we have Umngeni, which was focusing on domestic, and we have Umhlatuze focusing on industrial. So it means that that skill is going to be internalized because, you know, in some instances, the district becomes the water authority and the metro becomes the water authority, with an exception of Msunduzi. Msunduzi, the municipality, is a local municipality, but it does have the water authority. But it means that the issue of building and designing the holistic, thorough analysis, you require the strength of DDM model, which is why we have agreed and reached a consensus. The President has pronounced it that when you plan, you cannot just plan in silos, because the issue of water reside at the national level. We do Minister Mchunu. He has already transferred a lot of money to Zululand district, because the report speak about Zululand. 220 million has already been transferred in this financial year. But we are saying that, unfortunately, because of further scrutiny, you'll find that the money will be transferred for water, for bulk supply, but the money will be utilized for something else. Yeah. So the minister must make sure that they coordinate a team of ensuring that you follow the trajectory of that money, whether it's going to be utilized. It's the same with Tugela. You find people complaining at the court at Langalbalele and Okahlamba, but already there's been a money that has been transferred to the municipality. It has happened as well at Uku. So we are saying that, yes, the bulk infrastructure is currently being developed. A lot of reservoirs are currently being built. Umpugundlovu district, for instance, Azahaza, at Pompomene, they are building a huge scheme. Umngeni, they have just renewed and expanded a new water system at in town Msunduzi, a value of 1.2 billion. It means that some of these issues will be resolved in the near future, but I've already highlighted that, unfortunately, our people, the consumer rate might be high in some instances, but our people, they don't pay for the service. It's the same with electricity. You are load-shedded in some instances because of the supply and demand processes. You find that people are just consuming water, even internally in their domestic household, but they don't feel a need of ensuring that every month they go and pay for those things. So yes, the report in some instances is correct, but I'm saying that you must also balance a very skewed equation, but you must be scientific in checking other causal effects that I'm currently referring to, so that when we depict a picture, it must be coming from a proper precedent of saying that what are the historical matters that has caused up to, and why are we here, so that we are holistic at the end of the day.
So would you say what you're raising, particularly around the proportionate distribution of budgets, really per capita, based on what National Treasury would have determined would be what that municipality or rural area brings in, would be the reason why, for example, based on the KZN master plan on water, municipalities are not putting the mandatory required 8% reserve.
If I can just tell you, over the last year, they've just put new big, the pipes called aquatic pipes, the bigger pipes. But at eThekwini alone, the backlog, if they can service a proper eThekwini in the entire Thekwini municipality, they require probably something like 25 billion. Where would they take this 25 billion? Because the reality is that it might take another 15 years or relatively 18 years for them to address this backlog. And which is why you find that even if you want to develop eThekwini as a municipality, other companies, they will tell you that I want to invest probably 1.2 billion. I want to develop a mall. I want to develop certain properties around the eThekwini. You need bulk infrastructure. You need proper services. You need a proper process, which is why at eThekwini you will find that it will take some time, because spatial planning means that we cannot just grant, even at a level of 8, we cannot just give a certificate in terms of environmental process without understanding the process, that all the services that are required are on par, and they will be supplied by the municipality. So it is the reality that is currently taking place, which is why national we are saying that they must send teams, they must send engineers so that they can just take a scope. But I'm saying that some of these processes, like for instance, at eThekwini, Herikwala, Umgungundlovu, and Ugu, there is a big project of Umkomazi water dam that is going to cost probably 20 billion. It is going to address a lot of imbalances in that area, because it is going to assist with a lot of household. And in that process, in 3 years' time, when the project is finished, then the process of the backlog will be addressed and people will not be complaining. And at that point in time, that's where the Human Rights Council must go back and just look at what happened, juxtapose with their report, and must also report back.
So the report recommends, for example, what you're raising, a review of the funding model for municipalities, to considering the provision of a special grant. We spoke to the Minister of COGTA the other day around this issue of special grants. The picture that she's painting is that it's as simple as a municipality making a case for 25 billion rands of infrastructure, drawing out plans, and showing where that money is actually going to go to the ground. And a special grant could certainly be made available. But they're saying at this particular point, because of the technical capacity of some of the municipalities, you hear municipalities saying, we want 25 billion, but you're saying, where are you going to spend it? There are no plans, there is no projections, there's really no scope of work, there are no specifics as to where are you going to be putting each and every single cent towards this project.
But it's fair that we must also highlight the realities. Go and read what was presented by the Minister of Finance as we speak. Currently, South Africa, there is a shortage of cash injection in some instances because of what we owe in the processes. Currently, even it means that we have appropriated almost 2.3 trillion. In that, you'll find that you are owing probably that's 1 trillion is in the level of expenditure. It is in the level of debt. So it's not true that even if you can support the business, because municipalities rely on revenue stream. They do collect revenues like your eThekwini municipality, your Lembe district, your Msunduzi, your Mgungundlovu, your King Cetshwayo. But how they collect revenue will never suffice the demand. This is where the issue of water affairs come into force. This is where National Treasury, unfortunately, National Treasury will always tell the reality that I can't fund all these things, because in terms of education, in terms of health, their budget is already overspent. So I must balance the equations whether I want to supply pills in hospitals for those who are already very ill, and I must also supply the scholar transport for kids and all those things. So it's not a simple matter. I would want what they have not covered for me, the council, is that they must balance the equation of appropriation bill of South Africa. If in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, we have 13 million population, then you have the backlog of probably 30 billion. You must talk to that process pragmatically, so in terms of the praxis. How long will it take, and what is the methodology? Because I'm always arguing as well, that the country must always borrow, but for infrastructure, because which is developmental in nature. If the country started borrowing for salaries, then that country is not developmental in their nature. It is going to collapse. We are creating a social welfare state. So we are a country that is developing, that must create a proper means of ensuring that we collect revenues. In this financial year, you've already heard that National Treasury is not going to collect what is adequate from SAHRC. Yeah. So it means that they must also tap from other revenues. Then when you talk about water, then they will suffer in any way. So those are the issues that we must be mindful of when we're talking about these things. Because I saw from time to time, DA will only be antagonistic, but they are not realistic. They are not coming with scientific evidence. They are not even practical on the matters. They are even politicking something that are fundamental, because water is a right for our people. During their era, when they were part of apartheid government, they didn't consider the majority of our people. It was only meant for minorities. So we are just doing the process of ensuring that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, in their majority, Africans and black in particular.
What is your attitude and posture as province to the issue of dereliction of duty? Because if you have 600 complaints in 3 years, and what exacerbates the situation is no response, no communication coming from government officials, that the Commission saying would amount to dereliction of duty.
I agree that as government, in probably 3 spheres of government, we are short when it comes to media. In some instances, we always also complain as well in terms of the ruling part that we are so media shy as the state. Like, for instance, in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, you find that COGTA has delegated a lot of assistance towards municipality to deal with the revenue process, with the process of budgeting, the issue of skills transfer, equipping the senior management. You'll find that the Office of the Premier as well, and along with National Finance and Provincial Finance, they will send a delegation of people who are going to assist as well in terms of how to deal with the issue of capacity. But the reality is that it will take a province to have most of the engineers as a surplus before you send it to municipality, because there is a scarcity. I don't think we are realistic, because there are very few engineers who got a PR when it comes to water. Water is a specialized field. So it won't be the reality that almost all the districts in the province will have that aptitude and the acumen. So it means that you must have a shared service in a form of district model, in a form of saying that when we plan not in silos, but we plan as a team and we consolidate our approach. So we have not delegated our duties. We are doing what we could with the little resources that we have. The reality is that the resources are not adequate to cover other things, but we are also complaining as well as this government when municipalities fail to spend what has already been appropriated to them. It's a pity that not most of the time when it comes to water grant, they usually spend the entire water grants, but some of the grants up to today, they are not being spent. And it is our duty just to oversee when it comes to those processes.
Yeah, you take some of the report, you are adding to it in terms of perspective of what we need to bring in to better enhance our understanding of the situation on the ground. What do you make then of the recommendations? I mean, there are about 49 recommendations in the report. Are you going to at least those that pertain to province going to be implementing those? See, others have got to do with national, and others have got to do, for example, with other institutions of state, like the public protector, for example, around investigations.
We'll implement them to the T, to our utmost ability. So I'm sure we've already communicated with them, because the reality is that almost even all the Chapter 9 institutions are designed by this government to complement the processes. So we can't dodge the bullets. The bus stop with us. We must make sure that we comprehend, analyze, and implement to the T. But the reality is that whatever you do will require resources, but whenever there is an issue of a need of skills transfer, of acquiring more skills, we do that as the government. So I'm sure I've already gave you the synopsis that probably in 3 years to come, if the council could come, they'll give you another scenario, because we are at Zululand district, we are busy with Mandlaga's scheme, the reserve, the huge reservoir. We are dealing with Mkomas, which is going to be costing probably 25 billion, which is going to be servicing a lot of municipalities. There is a SAHRC scheme. There are already scenarios of saying that probably you don't even need, with a lot of dams, you need to do a lot of aquatic pipes in some instances, so that you are able to assist other municipalities. There are private dams that are currently existing in the in our municipality, like KZN Dam. It has been using the stream, but tapping on a private individual who's been utilizing because of the licenses. All those equations are things that this government is busy with them. Another issue is that we don't communicate some of those things on time, but we are just going to improve even on that, so that our people, they don't lose hope, they don't despair. They understand that we always characterize ourselves as a caring government, so we ought to deliver the duties, and we ought to make sure that the constitution that was designed to assist them is implemented, because they fought for this liberation. This liberation must service them.
Tobin, appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
That is the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, Siboniso Duma.